Good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year. Just while we're waiting for people to join us, my name is Robert Martin, and I'm the TFA National Vice Chair, and I'll be your host this evening. Welcome to our first webinar of 2023. The event this evening is kindly sponsored by Oxbury Bank. Oxbury was founded by bankers, farmers and technologists in the UK, as it is the only bank in the UK which is 100% dedicated to serving farmers, food producers and the rural economy. Their team of relationship managers understand both farming and finance, enabling them to discuss bespoke lending opportunities with farmers face-to-face on farm. This, combined with modern technology, allows Oxbury to deliver quick decisions and competitive price products. Farming is a people business, and they pride themselves in putting farmers first. Every one of their customers is part of Oxbury's mission to support sustainable British farming food production, and every pound saved with Oxbury goes to support the rural economy and nothing else. So we'll welcome them as our sponsors this evening. This virtual event is being recorded with a view for it to be published, and will be available on demand via the TFA YouTube channel in the next few days. For those who don't know of our virtual events and training, can be found on the TFA YouTube channel. Search for @Tenant Farmers and it will take you to our channel. We encourage you to pay us a visit and subscribe to the channel so that you are notified when we upload our new content. So far this year, we've hosted webinars on topics such as what was in the ROC report, working together for a thriving agricultural tenant sector, BPS, a lump sum exit scheme in England, nature-based farming techniques, and DEFRA future farm policy updates for England. Recording of these and other are included an introduction to BNG and carbon credits and public access rights, as well as the recently launched bite-sized TFA teach-in videos, which look at topics such as what to watch out for when signing a new FBT agreement, if your landlord can insist on their participation in environmental farm schemes, and changing succession eligibility tests are available on the YouTube channel. Moving on to this evening, the aim of our webinar is to help farmers in England and Wales better understand slurry storage requirements and showcase what help is available to those seeking to improve it, including the slurry infrastructure grant currently open for applications. This has come as quite a good time for me, because I've just priced up for a new slurry system for my own farm here, and at just over £250,000, we kind of took a sharp and take a breath, and we're going to see what we need to do and to make it work. And so that's why I'm going to be listening very hard to our excellent speakers tonight. The first of our speakers tonight that you'll hear from is the TFA advisor, Kathleen Woolton. Kathleen grew up on a remote farming community in the Highlands of Scotland. After graduating with BTEC honours in business management agriculture, Kathleen has focused her career on supporting people in rural areas to make the greatest success of their businesses. After moving to Shropshire, she attained MSc Merit in Rural Estate and Land Management from Harper Adams, while also working full-time for Sutton Parker and ADAS. Kathleen is a member of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors and a fellow of the Central Association of Agricultural Valuers. She is also a facts qualified advisor and a member of the Basics Professional Register, which qualifies her to provide fertiliser recommendations and advice on management, on soil health, water quality, and nutrient management planning. So an absolute fantastic person to have on your side when you're working through. Our second speaker following Kathleen will be Jonathan Payne. Jonathan has a background with ADAS and Natural England, and is currently a senior agricultural lead with the catchment sensitive farming. He is passionate about providing farmers and land managers with the information and guidance that they need to make decisions on the farm that benefit the business and help to improve water quality and also air quality. Following on our brief presentation this evening from Kathleen and Jonathan, you will have the opportunity to ask questions or give feedback. Please do this by typing questions into the Q&A feature on your Zoom panel. For some of you, this may be at the bottom of the screen. We've been very fortunate. We've had quite a number of questions submitted prior to this evening's discussion, and but I'm sure we'll have a huge number coming into on the live chat also. When we get to our question and answer panel discussion, joining Kathleen and Jonathan will be Charlie Chandler. Charlie has a background as a catchment advisor and is now the CFS Deputy National Programme Manager. So I think without further ado, I'll hand over to Kathleen for the first of our presentations this evening. Kathleen.
Thank you very much, Robert. Much appreciated. I really appreciate everybody taking the time to join us this evening. As we said in the title, we're looking at slurry storage tonight, not the greatest of topics, but a very full and interesting one, and very grateful to catchment sensitive farming to be here tonight as well. So what do you need when it comes to slurry, and what help can you get to improve it? This is a very busy slide, but we can summarise very, very quickly indeed. So the situation in England and Wales is generally the same, though different regulations apply. Everybody in England and Wales is required to have at least 4 months capacity for slurry storage, unless the structure is exempt. So if the exemption comes from structures that are pre-1991, as long as the number of the animals in the herd or the flock has not increased any since then, and there's not a significant risk of pollution from that. However, if you are in an NBZ area in England or in Wales, you do need to have slightly increased storage depending on what kind of animals you're farming. So generally, you'll find that most people in the dairy sector or beef sector will require 5 months. But if you are a poultry or a pig farmer in an NBZ area, you will require 6 months. This is notwithstanding that we have the control of agri-pollution regulations coming in Wales. At the moment, SAFO and NBZ regulations apply, but as of the 1st of August in 2024, it will essentially mean that all farmers in England and Wales will require to have either 5 or 6 months storage. So it's a very busy slide, but I think very clear about what's needed in terms of the amount of storage. So how do you know whether or not you're in a NBZ area or not? The next slide will show us the magic map from DEFRA. Now, the links that I'm using tonight, I'll have at the end of the presentation. So if you're not sure where to find these things, you can Google them. So if you Google DEFRA magic map, this will pop up, or you can use the link at the end of the presentation. And here you'll be able to see that you can put your postcode in on the top left-hand corner of this magic map. And then down on the left-hand side, you can see that I've selected designations and land and statutory designations. And here you can see the pink area is showing you the NBZ areas, and those in the grey areas is something that would be covered by the SAFO regulations. So if you don't know, and it's highly likely that you will, because there's a lot of other requirements covered by NBZ, this is the place that you would need to look for it. So how do you know how much slurry you have at the moment and whether or not that actually meets that storage requirement? Well, here we can find the AHBB Slurry Wizard. And this is a really useful little tool. Again, the link is going to be at the end of the presentation, which will tell you more about what slurry is being produced on your farm and also what you currently have in terms of storage. The slide that you can see up on the screen at the moment is the end of result slurry report, which will tell you whether or not you have sufficient storage to comply with the NVZ regulations. But there are a couple of other sheets where you will put in the measurements of any lagoons or stores that you have, whether you have a slurry separator, whether or not you create any parlor washings, and another tab which will talk about the kind of livestock that you have, the ages of those, so that you can get a feel for how much storage you have, what your livestock produces, and then therefore it will tell you whether or not you comply. And this is the kind of thing that if you're considering whether or not you want to be looking at increasing your storage, whether you want to comply right now, then this is the tool to use. So once you find out how much storage you have and how much you need, and what your legislative obligations are, whose responsibility is it? Is it yours as the tenant, or is it your landlord's? The answer to this question is, before you do anything, is to check your tenancy agreement. If you're a TFA member, then you can feel free to pass your tenancy agreement on to any of the advisors here, and we can have a look at this for you. The backstop is essentially for anybody with an Agricultural Holding Act tenancy that, unless the landlord has transferred the responsibility for providing fixed equipment for statutory requirements, then the obligation will be the landlord's. But it may be that in your tenancy agreement that they will have passed this on. For farm business tenancies, there is no backstop, so it will have to be in your tenancy agreement. Either the landlord will have accepted that responsibility, or they will have passed it on. So the first thing you should do, very important, is to check your tenancy agreement. And if you are not confident doing that, as I said, you can pass that on to a TFA advisor, and we can do that for you. So what else might impact on the amount of slurry storage you need? Now, the farming rules of water have been with us since 2018, and it doesn't have anything in there about what storage you do not need. However, it does talk about the need to ensure that applications must be planned to meet soil and crop need. It does state that you cannot spread in adverse soil conditions or ground conditions, as is demonstrated in the picture at the side of the slide. And guidance that was released at the start of 2022, UK government made it clear that any single application rate must be limited to 30 cubic meters every 21 days during the restricted period, in order to ensure that there is not a significant risk of pollution. The single application rate is only during that restricted period, which is generally the same NVZ period. So if you're in an NVZ, you will know what the restricted period dates are. If you're not, then again, that's the kind of thing that you can find quite easily online, or if you're not sure, you can call into TFA and we can point you in the right direction. But all of this means that you might want to have more flexibility in your slurry storage, not just meeting the statutory requirements. So where might you be able to get help in order to get slurry storage, whether you meet statutory requirement or not? And one of the options is the Slurry Investment Grant. Now, the Slurry Investment Grant slides I'm showing you at the moment, I have shamelessly ripped off from DEFRA, who know that I'm using it and are happy for me to do it. But rather than reinventing the wheel, I thought it would be helpful just to use these to show you what is potentially available. Essentially, the Slurry Infrastructure Grant has been provided to help farmers make better use of organic nutrients, improve water quality and air quality, and reduce the contribution to greenhouse gases. Their aim is that it should provide up to 6 months, it should provide 6 months storage, which is more than the statutory requirements in many cases. And it is absolutely required that one of the things that should be covered by the Slurry Infrastructure Grant is e-cover. Unless you already have one, you have a slurry bag, or acidification is being used. So who can apply? The scheme is often open to landowning farmers and tenant farmers, and the TFA were part of the Slurry Infrastructure Grant Co-Design Group, and we worked very hard on behalf of tenant farmers to ensure that the particular issues that tenant farmers face in terms of slurry infrastructure was noted and incorporated into the guidance. And one of the things that we were able to achieve is that during the grant process that you'll need to confirm you have a tenancy agreement in place, and that they would expect that to be for 5 years post the final payment. Though you might not have a tenancy agreement, which gives you that time period, as long as you have a reasonable expectation that that will continue, you can still apply to the grant. Who else can apply? So this is essentially for pig, dairy, beef farmers who already create slurry but have less than 6 months storage. It's very important that the store must be used to store slurry and not other substances like digestate, sludge, or farmyard manure. And who it is not available to is poultry and arable farmers or livestock farmers who do not produce slurry. So how much can you get? At the moment, grants are available from between £25,000 to £250,000. The contributions are equal to 50% of the market cost. So it's essentially a 50% grant towards standard costs of fixed equipment. And that could be slurry stores themselves, or it could be other equipment that's ancillary to that, including covers or pumps. It's anticipated that there is going to be quite a large demand for this grant. So they definitely are anticipating that they may be oversubscribed, and in which case they will need to prioritise, and they've identified priority areas. How they're doing that is by using Magic Map again. So they are looking at the areas in blue that you can see on your screen. Again, in the top left-hand corner, you can input your postcode so you can then be able to quickly identify your holding. And you would want to then look at land-based schemes in other schemes. At the very bottom, you can see that there is Slurry Infrastructure Grants Round 1. Now, that's not to say that if you're not in a blue area that they won't accept an application. It just means that if they're oversubscribed, they'll look in those blue areas first. So how you can apply to that is that there is this two-stage application process. At the moment, the window is open. It's going to be open until the 31st of January. You can use the online checker on the government website to see if you're eligible and how much grant you might be able to get. There'll be a short listing, as I said, that they will use the priority areas if they're oversubscribed. And if you're successful, they'll invite you back to make a full application. There is full guidance on the government website that you can look into to find out what you need to do as part of that full application. But do bear in mind that if your landlord is responsible for providing the fixed equipment necessary to comply with statutory requirements, but the Slurry Infrastructure Grant expects you to provide 6 months storage, which in many cases is more than is needed to comply with relevant regulations. That means that you need to get agreement from your landlord that they will bear the full costs and that they won't expect you to contribute the difference. It's very important to have a think about before you decide to make any application plans. There are some things that are not eligible though, so the costs of undertaking planning permission and any independent consultant costs won't be covered by the application. So there are some costs that you would need to bear yourselves if indeed you are responsible to ensure that the slurry storage is fit and compliant with legal needs. And that is my quick canter through slurry storage, what you need and what you might be able to get through the Slurry Infrastructure Grant. As promised, there are some links on the screen, which you can either note down now or contact TFA office and we can send them to you. Or again, this will be put up on YouTube and you can click on the links from there. So
right, that's lovely. That's fantastic. That it gives us a broad brush thought on what's coming down the line, and it it leads nicely on to Jonathan's presentation. So I'll just hand over to you for this moment in time, please, Jonathan.
Thank you, Robert. I hope you can all see me there. I've put that on. Right, yeah, welcome to you all, and thank you for the opportunity for CSF to come in tonight and to outline how our programme of work might be able to support you in your ambitions around slurry, and particularly where we come in with slurry management, that general support around slurry management. Next slide, please. Okay, so I thought I'd just start really with a very brief and high overview of catchment sensitive farming for perhaps those of you who are new to us, just an outline of what we can do and what we can offer. So Natural England delivers catchment sensitive farming in partnership with DEFRA and the Environment Agency, and it's part of Natural England's Farm Advice Service. We operate through a network of farm advisors and to some extent local partners as well, people like the National Park in some cases, and we aim to provide free one-to-one advice to support sustainable farm practices, particularly where these help deliver DEFRA's 25-year plan ambitions. You will see if you look at those that there are ambitions around water quality and air quality particularly in relation to ammonia loss. And also that DEFRA ambition around natural flood mitigation through nature-based solutions. Some of you will have heard those nature-based solutions under a different banner of slowing the flow, but certainly we're doing some support and advice around that. And we also make significant contribution to nature recovery through helping farmers to take action without in their support around catchment sensitive, countryside stewardship and elements of SFI as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so just to give you an idea of that range of advice activity, what we cover and what we can bring to the farm. So generally we aim to provide that locally informed, confidential advice. It's working with you on a one-to-one basis. It's on-farm advice to help farmers make that confident decision that will help you reduce your air and water pollution potential risk. We operate to support farmers across a wide range of management interests, and you can see some of those that I've listed there. So soils, pesticides, crop nutrient management plans, slurry manure management, infrastructure, a wide range of activity that our advisors can potentially come onto the farm and give you some support and advice around. We've been around since 2006 now, and I think we've worked with about 24,000 farms over that period and helped farms make more than 80,000 positive actions to reduce pollution. So, you know, have put quite a lot of effort into getting that support and advice out there, and yourselves taking that advice up and putting some really good work onto the ground to reduce pollution or potential pollution. And we think that the programme has been well received by farmers. The evaluation that was done, which included some interviews with yourselves, show that about 83% of farmers who've had contact with a CSF advisor would agree that they are a person who could be trusted, and that confidential side of the advice that we give as well. And there's a customer satisfaction rating of about 92%. So I hope that we are a programme that's certainly worth engaging with and that you can get something out of. Next slide, please. So if we turn now to our core focus for this evening, which is helping you around tackling that pollution from slurry, where CSF comes in, and particularly our role of the CSF advisor coming onto farm, moving you towards good or improved slurry management by way of better and more readily available advice and understanding. So our programme is really about bringing some of that advice, bringing some of that understanding to you, so you can help make those informed decisions around your slurry management and where you want to take it. And I think there's two aspects of that advice and understanding. The first is around providing you with core information and guidance, as I say, for you to help make those management decisions. And just an example, or for instance, around that might be about helping you in understanding the regulatory requirement around slurries and manures. If you're not clear around that, or you're unsure as to where you stand with that, we can come, we can assist, we can support in respect to that. For others, it might be around understanding the nutrient value of your organic manures, helping you perhaps do some analysis of that, some understanding of what those results mean, how you might be able to incorporate that into your whole farm crop nutrient management planning. So that's meeting that farming rule for water to not exceed soil and crop nutrient need. The second aspect that I think is important is one around helping you with the awareness of grant schemes and how to access and apply for those, and particularly where it's in order to achieve your slurry objectives for the farm. So this might be around helping you, signpost you to the scheme, explaining what they are there to do, and to meet the conditions of the grant. So there's a fair bit of support there, awareness around not just SIG, but around some of the other grant schemes that are out there. We're a useful signposting and information source as you begin to try and interpret how those grants might fit with your own particular needs. Next slide, please. So, what does our advice program offer? Well, it's goes much further than just slurry stores alone. I know SIG has a focus around slurry stores. Our advice program is a little bit wider than that and has been designed to be wider than that. So we aim to support and guidance across all aspects of that manure management chain. You see the chain really across the top there. You might have heard DEFRA call this the slurry management journey. But basically, it's from where slurry is produced across the farm, how it's captured, how it's stored, perhaps some of the treatment around it, and certainly into some of the storage. And then, most importantly, how do we best utilize that slurry when you come to actually apply that to crop and get the best nutrient support out of that? So basically, we're aiming to embed that advice on good slurry management, and particularly around helping you think about, plan, and really deliver those integrated systems, those joined up systems with all aspects that are in there, and particularly where these begin to help you lock in nutrients, so we don't get that leaching and loss and runoff of those nutrients, which obviously contributes to that risk of pollution. Next slide, please. So really taking into account greater awareness of the nutrient value of manures, and we've still got manufactured fertilizer at quite a price now, and I think we're fully aware, all of us, the industry, around those nutrient values of manures and slurries. So some of our advice is really looking at that end-to-end nutrient management, what you can do there in helping lock that nutrient in. So you've got slurry there to try and avoid inadvertent loss of the nutrient there, which is obviously a loss in terms of financial loss to you if some of that fertilizer, that nutrient is going out of the system, but it's also damaging to the environment. And so by looking at those joined up those systems, those integrated systems, trying to lock that nutrient in and to reduce the risk of leaching or runoff and loss. So this might start, for instance, with you fine-tuning your livestock nutrition, photograph to the left there, avoiding excess protein being excreted through the animal, through to low emission storage and spreading and capture, perhaps looking at the role of separation and what that might do for you and in terms of your slurry management. A fair bit around slurry storage and covers, and then that end point of the slurry management chain is helping you in terms of understanding, raising awareness around the nutrient value of that slurry and how to get best value out of that in terms of your spreading and application, perhaps moving away from spread plate, where we know there are significant losses, say, around ammonia, through to maybe some of that more precision application through dribble bar, trailing shear, etc. So that full range of advice, end-to-end management, end-to-end nutrient management. Next slide, please. So we have a program of tailored advice for you, really. Our advisors are locally based. They have an understanding of the challenges that farmers face, and both regionally but individually on the farm. And they will work with you to take that latest advice and to tailor it to its best fit for your farm business. We will use a mixture of one-to-one farm visits, coming to the farm, follow-up specialist advice visits when we really understand what you're looking for and what might benefit the farm. Some of that you'll be aware of, some of that we might be able to introduce to you. We've got that program of specialist advice visits. We can do some group events, and we can work through local partners. So all of that is the way that we're going to try and get that advice out to you. And what I want to draw attention to is the little leaflet that's on the screen there. That gives details of some of that specialist advice that we can offer and potentially bring to you using some of the specialists that we work with. I believe that is on the TFA website now, the leaflet, so I would direct you to that. Have a look at it. Get a feel for what we're offering and get in touch with your catchment officer if you feel that is going to be support to your farm business. Next slide, please. So how do you reach us? Yeah, many of you I know would like the name and number of a farm advisor, but obviously, farm advisors do come and do go. So this is the best way, really, of placing your request locally with some of those local teams, and they will make sure it reaches the right person, it reaches the best person. They'll take ownership of that as we go through. So we are asking you to use that local mailbox, and I'll go on to show you where those mailboxes are. And we're just asking for the briefest of information, really, about your inquiry. So a brief description of your farm and your query. So that might be around, you are a tenanted dairy holding, you're up in Cumbria, quick farm business and address, so we can begin to see what information we've got, where you are, checking in terms of some of the mapping. Single business identifier is a good one, or your CPH, and obviously your contact details so it come back to you. And so place that with the local mailbox, and that will be assessed, and the local teams will put you in touch with the right advisor to address your needs. Next slide, please. So that's where you'll really find where those mailboxes are. So if you can go on to gov.uk, if you just put gov.uk or catchment sensitive farming into Google, it'll take you straight to those CSF pages there. A little bit of information around who we are, just covers what I've told you. But more importantly, you can just scroll down and you'll find those local mailboxes. So if you click on the one which is nearest to you, they will put you in touch. If you get it wrong, don't worry, it'll be transferred across from one area to another. So that's the quickest and most direct route for you to reach your catchment sensitive farming teams to help support you in your area. So I think that does conclude my quick overview, Robert, of where CSF are in terms of that support and what we can offer. So perhaps I'd like to take the opportunity to invite you to place a few questions and perhaps to expand on the discussion around this whole concept of slurry storage and perhaps where CSF can come in with some support.
Well, that's fantastic. It's been a tremendous overview of what we can expect from the catchment sensitive farming group, and it brings us nicely on to our question and answers for this evening. But before I move on to that, there were some links, there were some leaflets mentioned in our presentation this evening from Jonathan there. The links for those are in our chat area. So if you want to go on to that, then you'll be able to get some more information there as well. So as I've mentioned, we're moving on to our question and answer session now. So I'll ask Kathleen and Jonathan to join us that. Also, we have Charlie Chandler as well to join us. He is the Deputy National Programme Manager at Catchment Sensitive Farming. So I think more brains and more heads are better on this one, because we've got quite a number of questions come in. So if we can all join in for this, that would be great. I think I'll start off with some pre-submitted questions that I've got here. And this is probably one for Kathleen. The round enamel steel store on my AHA holding was erected by ourselves at our own cost in the early 80s. It's now well past its safe working life, and there'll be a lot of them in the UK, and has several patched up holes. Who's responsible to install a replacement facility?
So for this one, really, the answer will depend on whether the landlord has transferred their obligation to provide the fixed equipment necessary to comply with statutory requirements in the tenancy agreement, or another document like a memorandum subsequent to the tenancy agreement, like a rent review, for example. Section 11 of the Agricultural Holdings Act 1986, which this sounds like it would be covered by, provides that a landlord of an agreement covered by the Act should provide legally compliant fixed equipment for activities that have been carried out in the holding for the previous 3 years, unless there's an agreement to the contrary. This is not altered by the fact that this member has put the structure up at their own cost. So I would say that if they're a TFA member, to call into head office, and one of our advisors can check their tenancy agreement and advise further. And then just thinking about the other side of the coin, that if the question had come from somebody who had a farm business tenancy, that there is no similar statutory fallback position regulated by the 1995 Agricultural Tenancies Act, so that the liabilities and obligations would only be set out in the tenancy agreement or any subsequent documentation.
That's lovely, thank you for that. We have another question here from a member in North Yorkshire. Is there funding to help me understand the most cost-effective way to decide how to address my slurry storage issues? I think probably Charlie on this one, please, if you could.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Yes, I hope that as Jonathan, I think, described there, catch and sensitive farming is available to provide advice on the broad aspects of slurry management, which of course can have an impact on your total slurry storage requirements. And this is free to all farmers, so that is funded by DEFRA as part of our programme. And we can offer advice across a range of topics, all the way from animal nutrition through to yard management, and then of course management of the slurry itself when you're applying it, which can obviously impact on slurry storage. I think it's probably fair to say that there are limits to the advice that we can give. So, for example, what we won't be able to do is design your slurry store. That's a technical specialist role, but we can offer you advice around everything up to that point. And also the other thing is we tend to steer away from offering you business advice. Once again, that's a technical subject which is probably best left to other experts. But hopefully the whole range of advice is available, and which has been published on the TF website, will help you when you're planning any improvements to your slurry stores. As Jonathan's described, the best way to do that will be to contact us at CSF through our local mailboxes. You'll then get a contact from a local CSFA who can come down the farm track with a neutral pair of eyes, have a discussion with you, and then set up specialist advice through our services as required.
Oh, that's great, is that? But I think following on from that question, I think another one that you could also maybe answer as well, Charlie. I've been looking at the Slurry infrastructure grant. Surely one of the barriers to uptake of the grant is the requirement for planning permission. What is being done to address this at a government level?
Yeah. No, great. Yeah, yes, DEFRA have seen this as a challenge, so that they've got sight of this question, because it has been raised before, and also it's been obviously a key consideration in the development of the grants. With that in mind, DEFRA is working very closely, both with Natural England and with the Environment Agency, to explain the benefits of the grant, and of course of good slurry storage, and also good slurry management in terms of reducing losses to the environment. So it is working and is continuing to provide advice to Natural England and local authorities on that, with the aim of unblocking necessary barriers. DEF has published some guidance and some information for local planning authorities about the grant, and that's also been communicated to local planning authorities through the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. So that's a letter that's gone to planning officers through that. Additionally, DEFRA is going to be working with local planning authorities where there's a high number of applications, just to understand their concerns. So yeah, this is as I say, an issue which has been cited by DEFRA, and DEFRA is working very closely with the relevant partners to deal with that.
I know when I sat on one of the forums with DEFRA looking at the grants for slurry and raising the issues with tenancies, we did mention that it may be possible to get like an early answer before you start spending a lot of money on planning applications, to say, well, like a soft touch, you say, well, we're looking to do X, Y, and Z. Can you see an issue there where they may turn me down for the planning in advance? Because I'm not going to spend 15,000 trying to get planning sorted, and then finally we get turned down at the last minute. So we kind of suggested that, and I think that was quite a good way of doing it. So at least you kind of get your early indication before you start full-blown planning.
Yeah, that's right.
And I could just
sorry, after you, no.
I was just going to say that one of the other things that TFA have been doing have been pushing for the slurry infrastructure to be considered as part of general permitted development. So that's one of the other things that has been moved forward in DEFRA, as we understand it, that there is discussions about whether or not that could be introduced in future. It's not going to be anything that's short term, but we continue to pursue that.
No, that's fantastic. That, and say, following on from that part there, this is probably for you, Kathleen, as well. What has the TFA been doing to highlight the issues of tenants in relation to slurry management?
Yeah, so we've been involved in a wide range of government working groups that relate to slurry management to highlight the particular issues of faced by tenants and to suggest potential solutions. And that's not just necessarily the obligations of landlords to provide fixed equipment, which we've obviously been quite strongly, but we've also been included as part of the co-design group for the slurry infrastructure grant and the slurry regulations working groups. And we were also very heavily involved last year on the updated guidance of spreading organic manure in autumn and winter time as well. So we have been very actively involved across a wide range of policy on behalf of TFA members to raise the particular issues of slurry infrastructure. And we've also been quite heavily involved in pushing that message into the Environment Agency as well, because obviously they're the ones that will be seen on the ground. So we have been working directly with teams of agricultural regulatory inspectors, but also at a national level as well, to highlight the issues that tenant farmers are facing, to hopefully head them off at the pass somewhat when they come on farm and expect the tenant to be responsible for that, when in many cases it's not the case.
Oh, that's grand, is that? And I suppose following on from that as well, was a question in here saying, will National Park support planning for slurry stores? Do we have any insight on that one, Kathleen? No,
I have no particular insight on national parks. I can certainly look into that and come back though.
That's fair enough. That's fine. Another question here. I understand that one of the recommendations of the ROC review is to allow joint applications for the grant for landlords and tenants, and there is a shared liability. What progress is being made to implementing that sensible approach? I don't know. Is that something you want to pick up on, Charlie?
Not a problem at all. Yes, I know that was being considered by DEFRA when this was being developed, and obviously it was a clear ask and a wish. Unfortunately, as it stands, I don't think DEFRA was able to get joint applications through for this round of the Surrey infrastructure grants, although it may be under consideration for future rounds, and DEFRA is saying there will be future rounds of this grant in years to come. So that, once again, that's something which I know was wanted, but wasn't able to be achieved, but for this particular round.
Okay, well, it gives a little bit of clarity there as well. I think moving back to Kathleen again, this is from a member in Cumbria. Given it is clear that my tenancy agreement that I am responsible for repairing and upgrading the slurry store on my holding, why do I need my landlord's consent, which I have seen is a requirement in the guidance?
Yes, we've actually got some really good news on that, actually. So that was something that was introduced at a later date, and that it wasn't part of the discussions in the working group on the Slurry infrastructure grant whilst it was being developed. So we engaged directly with DEFRA and RPA to express our concern that a blanket approach had been taken when many tenants don't actually require the consent of their landlord, though appreciating that sometimes that is a necessity. And DEFRA and RPA have now said that the guidance will be changed, so it will no longer be a requirement for landlord's consent to be given as part of the application. However, they will expect anybody who's making an application to self-declare, to say that if they require to have consent, they have that consent, so that has been completed.
Oh, that's great, is that's spot on. I suppose moving on to another point here as well, do stores have to have planning consent prior to application for the Slurry investment scheme, or do you simply have to be made an application for planning consent prior to the application for the grant? I don't know, either yourself, Kathleen, or Charlie, want to pick up on that one, please?
I can probably take that one if Charles
okay, that's grand.
Yeah, so plan permission is not required to be had at the initial stage. So it's a two-stage process. You don't have to have planning permission at stage 1, but you do need to have it at stage 2. So if you're invited back to make a full full application for the grant, then that's going to be in June. And so you will know before that whether or not you're going to be invited back to make a full application. So I would recommend being on the front foot and being as prepared as you possibly can be, because as we all know, that it does take time to get planning permission. So it is a requirement for the full application to watch out for that.
Okay, thank you for that. Another comment here, can CSF produce a crop nutrient management plan for me? Is that part of the service that CSF can provide when they come on farm initially? Is that something, Charlie, you can pick up on, please?
Yeah. Not specifically. What CSF can do is it can provide advice and training to you to help you produce a nutrient management plan, but it wouldn't cover the whole plan for your whole farm, for your whole crops. It will go through basic principles, and there'll be if for example you haven't produced one, then you can discuss it with your catchment advisor first, but also we do make one-to-one training available through our specialist advisors who we work with to help give you the basics about how you would approach pulling together a crop nutrient management plan. So it's probably more on the training aspect as opposed to producing the full plan itself, but hopefully that will be of use.
Well, that's right, and we can follow on for the next comment here as well. Can CSF do my Slurry Wizard calculation for me as part of the application? But that maybe is back to the training again, is it?
Yeah, once again, your catchment advisor can talk to you about the Slurry Wizard, but it is designed to be usable for farmers, and indeed, I think it's encouraged for the applicants themselves to use Slurry Wizard, because they are much more likely to have some of those key answers to the questions in hand that the wizard will want to get the data. So yeah, it is, as you say, more on the training level. If we had a lot of requests for training for Slurry Wizard, there's no reason potentially why a catchment advisor wouldn't look to organise a training event in your local area. if there are a number of farms that wanted training, for example. But as I say, it is hopefully usable enough for people to pick up and sort of complete themselves.
I think that's quite helpful, because I know in my own area we're part of a river quality group, and we have local advisors do that. And there's another comment here saying, would CFF work with a group of local farmers in helping reduce pollution risk? So that ties in quite nicely with that. And I think if you can speak to a lot of heads, a lot of people all in one go, it's going to save a lot of time for you guys, because time's very precious and short on a lot of these grant applications.
Yeah, absolutely, and we welcome any opportunity to work with farming groups. So if you're part of a group yourselves, there and you'd like to sort of have us come to your group, then once again to drop a line to us, and we'll see what we can do. But as you rightly say, getting people together is a great way to get action on the ground and to share good understanding as well.
No, I would agree wholeheartedly with that, actually. I suppose also looking at this is something else for you guys as well. Are there plans to control the cost of slurry stores? Rising costs are everywhere in this world. Often there is a grant mentioned, the cost of materials also increase, also negating the benefit of the grant in the first place. And that's something that we see ourselves here on farm, and other people will be finding the same.
Of course, absolutely, and it's just a continually moving ball, isn't it? That one at the moment, and I know that DEFRA wrestled with this as it was developing the grants in a situation which was changing very, very quickly and continues to change. I expect that DEFRA will continue to review its calculations. I don't know where exactly we stand now. Obviously, at some point they have to fix their rates at a point in time, but I imagine this will be kept under review for the reasons you've just mentioned.
Yeah. No, I would agree wholeheartedly with that, actually. We have another question here. Shouldn't we be focused only? Shouldn't we be focused only on those situations where farms are currently polluting, or are serious, at a serious risk of polluting? Surely, is it a waste of time and public money and private finance to be upgrading facilities where the risk of pollution isn't an issue?
Yeah. DEFRA's ambition for the infrastructure grants is for it to be available to anyone who's eligible to apply, and for it to be there to raise standards across the board, if you like. And so that's been key in the design of the scheme. I guess additionally to that, I think Kathleen did mention very quickly about how the infrastructure grants could be targeted if it's oversubscribed. Now that's all very much weighted on proximity of farms to protected sites and water, if it needs to be prioritised, and that's the question. At the moment, there's absolutely nothing in the prioritisation of the scheme about farms which are polluting or at risk of polluting. That isn't built into how the scheme is being assessed. That said, what I would say is that if any farm was worried about pollution risks from their holding, then to come to catchment sensitive farming, CSF. We obviously come down to the farm and we can look at issues and look at potentially where there are high risks, and then of course we can hopefully look to address those through a combination of advice, but also signposting to grants such as Slurry infrastructure grants, but also some of the other incentives that are available currently. So I hope that answers the question. Yeah, obviously where there is known pollution, that's very much into the Environment Agency's court, if you like. Catchment sensitive farming doesn't have a regulatory role. But if the Environment Agency themselves, and I think I heard mention earlier of the agricultural regulatory enforcement officers who are now within the Environment Agency, if perhaps they see areas that need work, then they too will also be signposting to the Slurry infrastructure grants as well. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. And I suppose the question from me on the back of that also is that if during my application of putting in for these grants, can an advisor from CSF write a covering letter or some sort of recommendation to say we've seen, we think this is a good scheme, they're in a priority area? Does that hold quite a bit of weight when someone is applying for a grant?
It won't affect the potential score of your application. Because DEFRA is very keen for that to be done through the design of the scheme more than anything else. However, DEFRA does want CSF involvement in this, and it does want to make CSF advice available to farmers who are interested in Slurry infrastructure grants, and that is principally to help applicants make the right decisions about their potential storage and their slurry management more broadly, and we know that's quite a big field in itself, which can then guide the size and shape of that application potentially. CSF will also be able to point out where obviously SAFO compliance on your store will be a requirement of the grant, and so the CSF can obviously help to guide on that as well. So whilst CSF isn't involved in the actual scoring of the Slurry infrastructure grants, CSF advice is highly valued by DEFRA, and DEFRA themselves will be asking CSF to contact successful expressions of interest, successful applicants, to offer advice on that basis, and we will also be reporting back to DEFRA as to who's taken up that advice too. So that's in addition to the kind of scheme promotion that we'll be doing on the ground as we reach out and contact you in the catchments. And also in our standard work as well, when we're on farm advising around the whole range of issues which CSF can offer advice on.
I think that covers that point really well there, actually. Well, we seem to have come to the end of our question and answers for this evening, and we've got one final question here. I think this, Kathleen, you could possibly pick up. In my case, my landlord is responsible for ensuring that the slurry storage is compliant. Why can't the regulators go after him rather than me? I don't know whether there's something there we can comment on that, or an update on that we can do, Kathleen?
Yeah, certainly. So happily, this is happening more and more in Wales because TFA have been in discussion with Natural Resources Wales about the particular issues that tenant farmers face, and that not necessarily is it the case that it's a tenant's responsibility to provide the fixed equipment, and they've committed to engaging directly with landlords where the responsibility to provide legally compliant slurry storage lies with them. The TFA certainly advocates that the Environment Agency should target resource at landlords who are refusing to upgrade any fixed equipment for which they're responsible. Where possible, TFA have been working directly, as I said earlier on, so we talked to the agricultural regulatory inspectors, and we have been raising awareness of these issues with regard to slurry infrastructure. And also we've been highlighting this at government policy and working groups as well.
Well, that's great. Well, thanks, Kathleen, for that. I think that brings our question and answer session to an end this evening. I hope you agree that we've covered a lot of ground and hopefully answered a lot of questions here. So it comes to me to thank tonight's speakers, Kathleen and Jonathan and Charlie, for joining in for the question and answers. I hope you've enjoyed our presentation this evening. I would like to thank our sponsor, Oxbury Bank. The next TFA webinar will be held on the 15th of February. The TFA, as invited back Janice Hughes, Programme Director for the Future Farming and Countryside Programme at DEFRA, to give farmers in England a further update on the ELM scheme. Don't forget to register in advance for the virtual events. Simply visit the events calendar of the TFA website. That's tfa.org.uk, and click on events and say that you wish to attend. As I say, I hope you found the webinar useful this evening. Thank you for attending, and good night.